Okay, so the next assignment, we're going to do another limited palette painting. So in your last painting that you submitted, there was a burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and titanium white. So there were only two colors that were complements and white. Now we're going to expand our palette to include three primary colors and the addition of white. So we're still not going to be using black yet, so we're going to hold off there. And we're really going to be focusing on using color to create chromatic grays. So chromatic, chroma, meaning color, right? Grays that are made from color, not black and white. So as we've been talking about, light has color, and so they're depending on the objects that you have and the light that's bouncing off of it. Your different objects, even if they're white, like these here, are going to start to have little bits of color in them. You don't want to go crazy and be really bright, still sticking with your grays. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to be exploring the primaries using our cadmium yellow light. You're going to use your cadmium red medium, your ultramarine blue again, and your titanium white. So these are the 4 tubes of paint that we'll be using. The next part of the setup is to create a still life at home. I want you to use 2 white objects on a brightly colored surface. So what I found are just around my house, I got a little white box, and just out of my kitchen, a little white dip bowl. You could also use a roll of paper towels, a roll of toilet paper, a cup, a mug, anything that's pure white. If you have Lysol wipes, well, you count yourself lucky right now, but you can take off the container, and that's a great cylinder. So any pure white objects. This assignment is often done using colored paper underneath. You can use any bright red, blue, yellow piece of paper. Or like I did, I actually just used a t-shirt that I had since I don't have any colored paper right now. And I put it on my table. And you can see I put one object a little bit behind the other, so there's overlapping, so I can have a nice composition. And I want a nice white background also. So I'm lucky, I'm in my studio, so I have nice white walls that I could just push my table against. If you don't have that, just grab a piece of paper and put it behind. You could put a board behind it and line that with white paper or white t-shirt, whatever you have, whatever your setup is. So then you need a light source, right? So we have our colored surface. I have a nice bright red, 2 white objects, and a white background. Then you want to have a light source. So to keep things how we've been doing it, I wanted to use a warm light bulb, right? There's cool bluish light, and there's kind of those yellow-orange light bulbs. So I found a yellow-orange warm light, and I put it in a clamp light, which you can get from Home Depot or any hardware store. But of course, you may not want to go out and get something new. So you could use any lamp, like a bedside table lamp, and give yourself a nice direct light source. And try and get some cast shadows in there. When I did this painting, I actually turned one of the overhead lights, so I only had a little bit of light, so I had nice dramatic shadows, easier to work from. Okay, so once you have your setup, then you have to set up your painting area. So what you can see I always use, this is just a piece of plastic on cardboard to make my palette, and I made it really nice and big so that actually I can attach my paper right to it. So I want you just to paint on paper, or you can paint directly on cardboard. I don't have any acrylic paper at home, so I actually just used a piece of what's called Bristol board, just a thick art paper. The paint does absorb, but I did it really quick. And so it's just a study, so I think it'll be okay. Okay, so I taped it around all 4 edges. How large do you want it? Around 12 by 12 inches or larger, that's up to you. I probably did about 12 by 18 inches. And you, like I said, your 4 paints, your bristle brushes, and then you're kind of ready to get going. So the first thing that I did was I actually created a mixing palette, just like we do in class usually. I didn't have, a template. So I just went ahead and looked at the different chromatic grays that I could make using these colors. I'm going to post these on a slideshow along with some in-progress shots of my paintings so you can look them up, look at them closely, and try them out yourself. I found it made it a lot easier to go ahead with my painting after practicing mixing these colors. So the first thing I did, right, was I made my first here a chromatic grays using a set of complements. Yellow and violet are complementary colors, right? So I have my yellow paint, and to make violet, I needed to use red and blue, right? So I mixed my red and blue, I got my violet, and then I took my yellow straight out of the tube, mixed them together until I got this chromatic gray. Then I added white, tinted with white more and more and more, so then you could kind of see a value scale. And you can see these grays have a little bit of a purplish tint to them, which then are very different than this middle row that I created with red. And then I mixed up my own green, right, using yellow and blue. So I took my yellow and blue, made my green, and then mixed my green and red together, right, to get this here. Then I tinted to get a nice value scale of grays. Right? But these are not made with black and white, so they're very different than the first grays that I made, right? They're a little more reddish. Then this last set here, I used my complements that you should be familiar with, blue and orange, but this time I made my own orange using the yellow and red, right? So you're always using all three primaries, just different amounts of them. So I took my blue and my orange that I made myself, made my new gray, and then I added white, 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 to get my nice value range. So you can see, right, this is your palette that you're going to be working from to paint your white objects, right? It's going to be a variation of grays. But because you have a nice bright color underneath your objects, the color, this red, is going to bounce off the white objects sometimes. So when you make your painting, okay, you're going to get a lot more color than you would if you didn't do that. So you can kind of see here, I have some warmer colors. You can see the reds and the yellows. And then over here, you see kind of more purples and blues, but they're all kind of in the gray, very neutral range. In the painting, right, you can kind of see when the red starts to creep up. Even on my wall back here, there's a little bit of red in that. Now, when I say red, it's very neutral. So when I see a little red bouncing off of a white surface here or here, I mix up a red, I mix a little bit of that green into that red to get it neutral, a gray, and then I add my white, right? So I'm always thinking about my complementary colors. What color do I see in the white? Do I see yellow in the white? Okay, but I want it to be gray. So I take yellow, add a touch of violet, and then add that to a bunch of white so that I get a very neutral version of that. So you're not seeing crazy color in this painting, but they are chromatic grays, meaning they're grays with chroma, with color in them, right? So what I want you to submit next week is an image of this study here. It should be of two white objects with a white background, with a nice value range from light to dark, right? Mixing with these primaries, your red, your yellow, your blue, and then your white on a nice bright colored surface. Again, your surface, you can find a yellow piece of fabric or paper, blue or red. But make sure it's nice and saturated so that you really start to see those colors bounce off your white just a little bit. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a few in-progress shots of this. So you're going to see how it looked when I first toned my paper with a nice gray, about like this. Watered it down, toned my paper like usual. I did my drawing, and then I actually went into my surface down here. Then I painted the objects, the background, and then went back to the surface down there to make some nice crisp edges. You should spend about 3 hours on this assignment, including the mixing exercise. So maybe spend about 30 minutes, 45 minutes mixing. And I will also include images of this, so about 30 to 45 minutes on this, right? And about 2.5 hours on this study. Then I want you to take a photograph of it and submit it on Blackboard.